Well, hey everyone, welcome to Elmer Full Gospel Church. We're so glad that you're here with us. If you don't know me, my name is Nathan Jansen, as Dave said, and I am the lead pastor here. Been pastoring here as the lead pastor since June, and it's been a blast. And so we have been going through this series called You Don't Complete Me, and today is the last day. And so we're going to close out our series today, and it is going to be a good one. Last week we were talking about singleness, and so this week we are going to dive into the topic of marriage. And this is really a whole series that's been about kind of tuning out relationship myths and learning how to focus in on Christ-centered relationships. And so if you're single or you're dating or engaged, when it comes to today, you are going to learn how to prepare for marriage in the future. And if you are married, this should help you grow in your marriage, or it will be a reminder of some of the things that you should continue to do in your marriage. And so I figured I'd want to start off today by telling you a little bit about Natalia and I's journey when it comes to marriage. Is that okay with everybody? Can I tell you a little bit about our story? You don't really get a chance, so I'm going to tell you anyways. The very first time I met Natalia, we were at a church in Ottawa, and I saw her, and one look at her, and I thought, wow, this girl is super cute, incredibly cute. I need to get to know this girl. And so that was my very first thought. Saying that, I wasn't even on her radar. Like, she didn't know I existed. And so a couple years down the road, I ended up going to Bible college, and they sent me out on this ministry trip. So every once in a while, we'd go to different cities, and we would speak at different churches. And so I ended up going back to the same church that I originally saw Natalia for the first time. And so after I had ministered there, they invited me out to a young adult night and to go hang out with some of the young adults. And who was there? None other than my beautiful wife, Natalia. And so I thought to myself, well, this is my opportunity now. I got to go talk to this girl. And so I went over to her and I started talking with her. And thankfully, she wanted to talk with me too. And so I was like, all right, this is a good sign. Because, if a girl doesn't want to talk to you, that's probably a sign that it's not going to go anywhere, okay? For all the guys who are single in the room, it's a good sign. So we started having a conversation. And do you want to know what we talked about? We talked about Jesus. We talked about ministry. We talked about the Bible. We talked about how her grandpa planted churches. And so it was a really great opportunity for us to get to know a little bit about each other, but it was also focused in on Christ and what Christ was doing in our lives. And so the first thing I did when I got back home from this trip is I broke up with my then girlfriend. Yes, I did have a girlfriend at the time, and there was no way that I was going to be able to continue that relationship because Natalia had the it factor. She had the wifey material, okay? So point number 2 there for all the single guys in the room, if you meet someone that is the woman that you are supposed to marry, break off any other relationship that you have in your life and go full steam ahead. So Natalia and I started talking, and I believe it was in May, several years ago now, over 10 years ago now, that there was a youth conference that was happening. And so I had talked to my friend, Eric, a good friend of ours, a mutual friend of ours, and said, hey, make sure that I can have an opportunity to hang out with Natalia in groups. And so he made a way, because Natalia was a chaperone, he made a way for us to hang out. And so the whole weekend, we were talking, getting to know each other. Again, it was a great opportunity to get to know her. On the last night of the conference, I thought, this is my opportunity to get her number. This is it. This is my chance. And so it was the last night, and at that youth conference, God just was moving, and all the youth were in the front, and they were praying. And well, I got notice that my bus was going to be leaving. And here I am, no word of a lie, Natalia is one of the last people praying for youth in the front, and I do not have an opportunity to get her number. I'm not going to be that guy that goes over and taps on her shoulder while she's praying for someone like, hey, can I get your number? That would probably ruin it all right there. And so I went over to our mutual friend and said, hey, can you give me Natalia's number because I need to text this girl? Like, I have to continue this. And so he said, yeah, no problem. But later, I found out that he also gave my number to Natalia as well, but I had no idea. So Monday came around and I'm sitting in my bedroom. I'm literally texting this like perfect message because I really want to impress this girl and I really want to kind of continue the conversation. And what happens? A text comes through from an unknown number and it says, hey, this is Natalia. How are you? And so I literally rejoiced. Talk about doing a little mini dance in my bedroom, because what did that tell me? It told me that she was interested. And so things kind of took off from there. We're not going to go into all of the details, but I do have a picture of us when we started dating. So that is Natalia and I when we started dating. Now what you need to know is before we ever started dating, is we had a conversation about where Jesus was leading us. This girl has some amazing parents, and her amazing parents taught Natalia to make sure before you ever get into a relationship that you know where God is taking you, you know that you have the same dreams and aspirations, and your ministry is aligned. And so we had that conversation. Now, speeding things up, we had a year and a half of dating, and then we had 6 months of engagement, and then we got married. So I have a picture of our marriage. Our wedding day. You can tell I was quite excited. Very, very excited to be marrying my best friend. And since then, we've been fruitful and multiplied. We've followed the Lord's command, and I have a picture of my family. And so that's the glow up. That's where we're at right now. We have 2 little daughters. And so that was our journey, dating, marriage, children. And each one of you in this room have your own story. Each one of you have a journey of dating, becoming married, growing your family. And so if you're married in this place today, you'll know that there are some keys that it takes that you need to know about to continue having a successful marriage. And so today what I want to talk about is I want to talk about 3 keys to a successful marriage, okay? 3 keys to a successful marriage. All right. Now, to be clear, I am not saying that I am an expert in any way, shape, or form. I am not saying that I have the most amount of experience when it comes to marriage. There are definitely some of you in this room that have years of experience on me, and you know more than I do, and you are wiser than I. But what we do have is we have the Word of God, and the Word of God is the basis for what and how we should be pursuing our spouses. The Word of God tells us a whole lot about marriage, and so we're going to focus in on that. So if you're taking notes this morning, I want to give you the first key to a successful marriage. And the first key is this: keep Jesus at the center. Here's the thing. Marriage isn't just between a husband and wife. Marriage is actually between a husband, a wife, and Jesus. From the beginning of time, that is how God planned this out. There was Adam and Eve, and who was with them? God. So it's never been just about 2 human beings, but it's always been about 2 human beings together with God. And so why is that important? It's important because the health of your relationship with Jesus is a direct indicator of the health of your marriage. I want to say that for you one more time, because this is like the main point right here. The health of your relationship with Jesus is a direct indicator of the health of your marriage. And so if you don't have a healthy relationship with Jesus, then I can almost guarantee you that your marriage will not be as strong as it could be. And so if Natalia and I are ever going through little bumps in our marriage or disagreements, or we are back and forth at each other, the first question that we have to ask is, how is our relationship with Jesus going? Because here's the thing, the closer you are to Jesus, the more loving, forgiving, and giving you will be. Jesus is the one who helps us become better partners in marriage. Let's take a look at Ephesians 5:25. It says, husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church, and what did he do? Gave himself up for her. And so marriage is really meant to be this reflection of the relationship between God and the church. What did Jesus do for the church? He gave up his life for her. So what does that mean? It means if you want to have a good marriage, you're going to have to learn to give yourself up. It looks like you learning to die to self. It means that you need to learn how to give rather than receive. It means that you need to learn how to serve rather than be served. And so the success of your marriage is largely dependent upon the relationship that you have with Jesus and how you're following after him. And so think about it this way. What's your relationship status with Jesus right now? What's your relationship status with Jesus right now? Is it single? Jesus isn't even on your radar? Is it complicated? You had a relationship, but now it's a little messy and you don't know where you're at? Are you dating? Like you spend a little bit of time with Jesus here and there, you're just kind of getting to know him? Or are you married? Do you have an intimate, deep relationship with Jesus? Because the truth is, if you are married, I'm going to tell you right now, if you are married to Jesus in this analogy, you will have a more successful marriage. So what's your relationship status with Jesus? When you have that type of connection with Jesus, there's something that happens. You know how to love, and you know how to be loved. And so when you are connected with Christ, that character is being formed within you. And when you have the character of Christ, and when you're reflecting Christ, that leads to a marriage that is strong, stable, and will last a lifetime. Think about it like this. You're a glass of water, okay? You're either going to pour out or you're not going to be able to pour out, right? When you spend time with Jesus, your glass is full, and so that means that you can pour into your spouse, you can pour into your family, right? You have more to give. But when you don't spend time with Jesus, your glass is empty. And so what are you trying to do? You're trying to pour out from a dry place. It does not work. It's not ever going to work. And so when we spend time with Jesus, we have more to give to our spouse. We have more love, more patience. We're more generous, right? But what happens when the glass is empty? What happens when we don't have a lot to give? Then we're quick to anger. We don't have a lot of love. We don't have a lot of patience. We're very slow to forgive. Ephesians 4:31-32 tells us this. It says, get rid of all bitterness, rage, and anger, brawling and slander, along with every form of malice. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as Christ God forgave you. So how does verse 32 happen? It happens when we spend time with Jesus. And so we need our glasses to be full in order to give our spouses what they deserve. Now, I talked about this last week, but keeping God first is the roadmap that we are supposed to follow, right? It's just as important if you're single as if you're married. And so I want to just take a look at this again because it's so fundamental to the key for a marriage. All right, Matthew 22, 37 to 39. It says, Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself." And so when we love God as the first and greatest in our life, then everything else gets blessed. He has to be the first and greatest. But what happens in our culture is a lot of times first and greatest is not him. First and greatest is our career. First and greatest might be our spouse. First and greatest might be our kids. First and greatest could be a lot of things, but in a lot of instances, it's not God. And so what God is saying to us is that you need to put me first, because when you put me first, I will supply everything that you need, and that includes what you need for your marriage. Okay? When we keep God first, he becomes the source, and out of that, we are full and we can give everything that is needed to our spouses. And so for anyone who's single or dating, that's why it's so important for you to make sure that you date someone who puts God first in their lives. It is the utmost important thing in your life. It is the greatest commandment of any Christian is to put God first. And so you want to have another person that has the same level of importance placed on him. Paul actually talks about this in 2 Corinthians 6:14. Let's take a look at that. It says, "Do not be yoked together with unbelievers. For what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light have with darkness?" So why would Paul say that? Paul says this because if Jesus makes a marriage strong, and you only have one person in the marriage who is focused on Jesus, then it's going to be a struggle because one of you is going to go to the left and one of you is going to go to the right. One of you is going to go this way and the other one's going to go that way. And so don't even get me started when it comes to kids. We have to think about the future. We have to think a bit about the moments that's going to transpire after marriage. Okay? What happens when you put two people, one person wants their children to love and know about Jesus and go to church, and what happens when one person doesn't want anything to do with Jesus and doesn't want anything to do with the church? The things get very, very messy, right? And so it's really important that we stress that when it comes to dating, that we take the time to find someone who has the same level of importance on Jesus. Okay? I'm going to help you. If you will do this, you will have a stronger marriage, believe me. Now, before I move on, I want to address some of those of you in the room who might be in a marriage with someone who isn't following Jesus right now. Maybe that's a decision that you made. Maybe that's someone who's fallen away from Jesus during the marriage. But the Bible actually talks about this exact situation. It says to continue to pray and to continue to be an example to that spouse. 1 Peter 3:1 says, "Wives, in the same way, submit yourselves to your own husbands, so that if any of them do not believe the word, they may be won over without words by the behavior of their wives." And so what is this? What is this saying? It's saying continue to seek after Jesus. Continue to live in faith. Continue to do the things that Jesus has called you to do, to be the person that Jesus is calling you to be. And when you do that, you have a better chance at winning over your spouse to Jesus. And so I'm not going to take a whole lot of time on this, but how do we keep Jesus at the center? Do the basics. Read the Word. Talk to God. Spend time in your devotions in the morning, right? Ask Him to make you into the person that He's calling you to be. Ask Him to help you become more like Him. Okay? So that's the first point. Here's the second key for a successful marriage. You ready? Know and meet the needs of your spouse. Know and meet the needs of your spouse. Okay, this is big. Both men and women have our own unique and different set of needs, okay? God designed us that way. He wired us that way. So understanding what your spouse needs is essential to building a strong marriage. Now, here's the thing. If you don't know the needs of your spouse, then how will you ever be able to meet them? So we have to know the needs. We talked about this last week, but I need to say this again. There are some needs that no other human being can ever meet. Okay? And so we'll start with that. When it comes to your identity, when it comes to your purpose, when it comes to your salvation, when it comes to fixing the things in your life, you cannot rely on someone else to do that. That's not okay. That's a completely unhealthy way to think about your spouse. The only person that can do that is Jesus, okay? So your identity, your purpose, your salvation, right? No one else can save you except for Jesus, all right? Those we leave up to Him. But it is important to know that there are needs that we are called to meet. So what are the needs of your spouse? Has anyone ever read the book Love and Respect by Dr. Emerson Eggerichs? Anyone ever read that book? Yeah, a few of you have. Okay, so you're going to be ahead of the game here, ahead of the curve. Because I'm going to use some stuff from that book today to share about these needs. So according to him, the primary need of a wife is love. And the primary need of a husband is respect. And so when these needs are met, generally speaking, everyone is happy. But when these needs are not met, things get a little crazy. Okay, so it's important to note, both husbands and wives need both love and respect. Okay, I'm not saying that it's one or the other, but there is a particular preference for each. And so men typically will crave respect, and women will typically long for love. When we get this, Natalia and I read through this book, and it dramatically changes the way that we look at each other's needs. But when you get this, and when you begin to apply this into your marriage, it will drastically help you. So I want you to make sure that you're focused in here, because this is the good, meaty stuff of this message, okay? So Ephesians 5:33 says this: "However, each one of you also must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband." And so husbands are called to love their wives, and wives are called to respect their husbands. Okay, so for all the guys, let me tell you what women want. Just so you know, I really don't know all of the details. My wife will tell you the same thing. But I looked into some research, and the research is really good. So I'll give you some research. Why am I whispering? Not sure. Women need love and affection. It's like oxygen to their soul, okay? They have this deep need to feel cherished, valued, and emotionally connected to their partners. So it's not just about saying, "I love you," but it's about showing your actions and expressions to them. Now, husbands, I need to clarify something with you. Love and affections does not mean sexual intimacy. okay? It means opening up the door for them. It means holding their hands. It means hugging them, giving them kisses. It means bringing them flowers. It means paying attention to them. That's what it means. It means taking the time to listen to what they have to say and try to relate with their emotions, right? For all the guys who are like, man, that sounds difficult. Yeah, it takes work. Marriage takes work. No one said marriage was easy. And so this is not something that you do for your wife because she did something for you. This is not a favor that you do for her. Okay? You love your wife and you show her affection because it is something that she needs. This is not a want. This is a need. Think of your wife like a flower. What does a flower need to grow? Needs sun and water. What does your wife need to fulfill her purpose? She needs love and affection. And so if you want to get the most out of your wife and you want to see her flourish, then you will show her love and affection. Okay. So this is important. So for all the husbands in the room, I want you to look at your wife right now and tell her, I will give you love and affection. Even if you don't mean it, start today. Now for all the ladies in the room, all the ladies, let me tell you what men need. I feel a little bit more confident about this one. Every man needs respect and honor. Just as women need love and affection, men need respect and honor. Respect is essential for a man's mental and emotional well-being. It's what makes us feel valued, and it's what makes us feel significant. And so we deeply desire to feel respected by our wives. So what does it mean to respect your husband? Well, it looks like holding him up in high regard. It looks like acknowledging his opinions, affirming his decisions, and a big thing. If you want to have troubles in your marriage, then criticize your husband in front of other people. It is the worst thing that you can do, okay? So what do? In front of people, we make sure that we respect them. And so we want to encourage them by telling them that they're doing a great job. We want to praise them in their abilities and their qualities and their achievements. Now, I know some of you are thinking, well, he doesn't show me love, so I'm not going to respect him. Well, the same principle that applied to you when it comes to a need versus a want is the same thing that applies to him. This is a need, not a want. And so you can think of your husband like a car. A car needs gas. It doesn't want gas. And if you want to see your husband ever get to his destination and where he needs to be, then you've got to give him respect and honor. Okay? So fill up that gas tank. Now, if you're a wife in the room, you can turn to your husband and say, I will give you respect and honor. Even if you don't mean it. Start today. Okay, now here's the silver lining, okay? When a wife respects her husband, he tends to love her more. And when a husband loves his wife, she tends to show him more respect. And so it's this ongoing cycle, and when there is love and respect, both parties are happy and things are working out great. But what happens when you don't love and respect each other? What happens is you end up on this thing called the crazy cycle. Okay, the crazy cycle is a destructive loop of unmet needs, and it can completely destroy a marriage. And so when a husband feels disrespected by his wife, he comes across as unloving. And when a wife feels unloved by her husband, she comes across as disrespectful. And so what happens is this sets off this chain reaction where each person has a negative response, and it creates a cycle of conflict and resentment, conflict and resentment, conflict and resentment. And the only way to get off this cycle is an effort from both the husband and the wife to recognize that their contribution to the pattern. So you have to realize, okay, I'm contributing to this, and then you need to prioritize each other's needs above your own. So wait a sec, what do you have to do? You have to die to yourself, and you have to serve, not be served. You have to give, not receive. Christ, what did he do? He gave his life for her. And so we need to know and meet the needs of our spouse in order to get off the crazy cycle. Now, one thing that we have to talk about when it comes to marriage, we cannot overlook this, and the importance of this is sexual intimacy. Okay? The Song of Songs was given to us. God gave this to us as a testimony to the beauty and importance of physical intimacy between spouses. And so what you need to know is that one of the outcomes of meeting each other's needs is that it actually will enhance sexual intimacy within the marriage. And so when wives feel loved and cherished by their husbands, it deepens their emotional connection, and it makes them feel secure in the relationship. It also affirms their worth and increases the willingness to engage in sexual intimacy. On the other hand, when husbands feel respected and admired by their wives, it strengthens their sense of worth and their masculinity. And so in turn, this heightens their desire for intimacy and makes the bond stronger emotionally. Okay, so when it comes to meeting each other's needs of love and respect, what we are doing is laying a foundation for a fulfilling and satisfying marriage in every way. So it is incredibly important that you know and meet the needs that your spouse has. All right. Hope you caught that. That was a lot all at once. Hope you're taking notes. The third key that you need to know is that communication is essential. Communication is essential. Okay, one of the biggest keys to the success in your marriage is learning how to talk each other's language. Has anyone ever read 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman? 5 Love Language, all right. So for the next little bit, I'm going to be relying on some of the information that comes from him. Do you see what I'm doing here? I'm going to Christian doctors who have researched this and studied this, and I'm bringing you the best parts of what they have come up with in their research. I'm not trying to come at this just from my opinion, okay? So this is a book that has been incredibly helpful for Natalia and I's marriage. There are 5 love languages that he lists in the book. There's words of affirmation, which is verbal compliments and words of appreciation. There are acts of service, which is things like cooking and cleaning and taking out the garbage. There's receiving gifts that are, found, bought, made, that say, I'm thinking of you. Quality time, which is undivided attention, right? That's where you want someone's complete focus. You want to have them one-on-one. And there's physical touch. That looks like hugging and kissing and showing physical affection. Husbands, in case you're wondering again, this is not about sexual intimacy, okay? And so we have to be aware of that. So what you need to know is that when it comes to men and women, we are generally speaking different love languages. We are generally not speaking the exact same thing. And so in order to find out what your love language is, I suggest going online. There is a free quiz that you can take to help you determine what your love language is. It's really, really great tool. Natalia and I do this probably, I would say, once a year, once every other year, because what we've found is that the love language that we were speaking in our first year of marriage is not the same love language that we were speaking in our 10th year of marriage, because what happens is things change across the way, and sometimes what happens is you're thinking, oh, my wife's love language is the same as it was from day one. Well, it changes, and then she's not feeling like she's being heard or understood, and it's because we've got it totally wrong. And so I'm just trying to tell you to try to give you a little bit of advice here. Take this test. It's really, really beneficial. So my top love languages are quality time and words of affirmation. And Natalia's top love languages are acts of service and physical touch. And so we take this really seriously. I have on my bathroom mirror a little printout of Natalia's love languages. That is how important we take this thing. So I'm looking at this printout every time I'm brushing my teeth, and it's a reminder to me that this is Natalia's primary love language. This is her secondary love language. How can I speak her language today? Okay? Write that one down. You should do that too. I suggest it. So why would I do that? Because communication is essential to the success of your marriage. Now, what I find really funny is that in the movies, a lot of the times, it's shown that women love expensive gifts. That's like the primary way to a woman's heart, is to just buy her expensive gifts. Natalia scored a 0 on gifts when it came to this test. So I could buy Natalia expensive gifts all day long, and she'd be like, thanks, but why aren't you hearing me? Why aren't you showing me real love? And it's because I'm not meeting her love language. So what have I learned? I've learned that the way to Natalia's heart is by cleaning the kitchen. Acts of service. I've learned that the way to her heart is to make the bed in the morning. I've learned that the way to her heart is to get up and make her coffee. And so you really need to learn this love language of your spouse if you want to be speaking the same love language. And so I encourage you, maybe take some time, even this week or next week or sometime this month or next month, set aside a date night, do the test, and talk about your love languages and talk about how you can do better at meeting those needs. Okay? Sound good? So what happens when your wife is feeling loved? What happens when your husband is feeling loved? Well, then you are meeting their needs, which opens an opportunity for the birds and the bees. I'll say that one more time. You write this one down? So what happens when your wife is feeling loved? What happens when your husband is feeling loved? You are meeting their needs, which opens up the door for the birds and the bees. Okay? I'm glad that you really enjoyed that one. Came up with that one myself. All right. So communication is essential. Proverbs 18:21 says, "The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit." So you have the power to speak life or death into your spouse. You can either build them up or you can tear them down. But here's the thing. You get to choose. You have this power. But I will tell you this. If you choose life, you get to experience the benefits from that. And if you choose death, you get to experience the consequences or bear the consequences of that. Ephesians 4:29-32 says, "Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen." And so we need to be building our spouses up according to their needs. We shouldn't just speak words generally. We shouldn't just do things generally, but we should know their needs and choose to build them up with that. Okay? Pretty cool that the Bible has all of this incredible wisdom in there that can apply directly to your marriage. So let me ask you this question. Do you know what the love language of your spouse is, and are you meeting that need? You don't have to shout it out, okay? Have you taken the time to learn what they need? Have you taken the time to discover how they speak? Because I'm going to tell you right now, if you will do that, the conflict that you might have in your marriage, the disagreements that you're having in your marriage, this will bring everything into alignment. You'll be on the same page, you'll be speaking the same language, and your marriage will get better because of it. So we need to take the time to do this, okay? When we figure it out and we choose to build them up, you will have a healthier marriage. So as we close this series, it's important to remember this. The most important key out of the keys that I've just given you is that Jesus has to be the center. The title of our series says, "You Don't Complete Me." And what was the subtitle? Christ-centered relationships. We did a whole series, I guess it was probably last year sometime, about Christ-centered families. Well, Christ-centered relationships, when it comes to your marriage, also helps you build Christ-centered families. And so the key ingredient to everything is making sure that you keep Jesus at the center, because our connection with Jesus directly influences the health of every single relationship we have. Whether we're single, whether we're dating, whether we're engaged or married. And this applies to your children as well. And so keep Jesus at the center. Jesus wants you to succeed. I want someone to hear that this morning. Jesus wants you to succeed. He wants you to have a successful relationship. He wants you to have a successful marriage. He wants you to thrive. He doesn't want to see you fail. But here's the thing. It takes sacrifice. It takes commitment. It takes giving of yourself. Giving of yourself like Jesus did for us on the cross. So that's our roadmap. Jesus at the center. The music can come back. So we love God first. And He gives us everything we need to succeed. So no matter where you find yourself in this life, no matter if it's a high or a low, you can take that, apply that truth, and watch what Jesus will do. Let's stand across this room. If you're married in this room and you are here with your spouse, I just want you to take a moment and just you might have come yelling at each other in the car. You might have come so upset that one or the other made you late. You might have been fighting this week, but I want you just in this moment to grab your spouse's hand, squeeze it real tight. Okay? Squeeze it real tight. And if you will, I want you to just take a moment, if you can do this, just muster those words. Even if it has to be under your breath right now, you say, "I love you." That's right. Now I want you to look at each other in the eye, and I want you to say, "Let's make sure Jesus is first." All right. Jesus at the center is your direct relationship. Looking for the word. Jesus at the center means that everything else comes into alignment. Jesus at the center means that you will have health in your marriage. Jesus at the center means you can deal with all of the baggage that comes with some of your past experiences. Jesus at the center means he'll deal with the arguments and the brokenness. Jesus at the center means that you will thrive. And so I want to pray for you this morning. I want to pray for your marriage. And I want to pray that you thrive in every area of your life. And so if you will, when I'm done praying, I want you to take just a minute or two with your spouse, and I want you to just pray for them, pray for each other, however long that takes, and just begin to pray over their lives. Again, some of you might be like, oh, I can't do that. Force yourself to do it. Pray for your spouse. Take that time. So I'm going to pray for you, and then you're going to pray for each other, okay? And for all the single people in the room, you're going to take a moment and you're going to say, Jesus, I put you at the center. Help me find a good Christian husband or a good Christian wife, or help me be the best single person I can be for the rest of my life. Okay? Let's do that. Thank you, Jesus, for all that you're doing in us. Thank you, Jesus, that you are the one that holds our relationships together. Thank you that you are in the middle of every husband and wife in this room. Thank you that you have called us to be incredible individuals, but you've also called us to be one in the context of marriage. And so, Jesus, I just pray that you will help build these marriages up. I pray that you will help bring guidance and wisdom. God, I pray that there would be an overflowing amount of love and grace and forgiveness and truth and respect and honor. God, I just pray that you will allow us to see each other as you see us, that you will see the good things, that you'll help us see all the benefits of our spouses, all the good things of our spouses. God, and I pray in this room, if there is brokenness and if there are things that have happened in the marriage that have led to a shakiness, God, I pray that you would just renew that, strengthen, Lord, their marriage. God, bring them back together. You are a redeemer, and you are the fixer, and you are the saver. So, Lord, I pray that you will do that today. And God, I just pray that we will see and hear of all the incredible stories of what God is doing in marriages across this church. And God, I pray that because we are centered on you in our relationship, in our marriages, that our families would follow suit. We'd have Christ-centered relationships and Christ-centered families all across this building. In Jesus' name,